disadvantaged because we want to be left alone. So we don't want to tell people what to do. We don't want to seize control of institutions. We want to raise our families. We want to have a sort of life that this country that was sort of like it was in the 50s. You know what I mean? We want, and then people always go, oh, what about Jim Crow? Yeah, minus the stuff we didn't like. Right. But we want the barbecues, and we want to have a catch with our son in the backyard. Yeah. And these people are not interested in that. Like when it came to COVID, I was at a disadvantage because all I wanted to do was be left alone. Sure. But the weaponized left didn't want to leave me alone. And so you're at a disadvantage, and I don't think it works anymore to go, look, they all want what we want. They love their kids. We love our kids. There's a misunderstanding. No, we need to get on the offensive now and go back at these crazies because they're not going to listen. They're basically Hamas, essentially. It's not enough. Just live and let live. Govern how you want to govern. No, you have to be eradicated at this point.
Look, that is exactly right. And this book is explaining it's not just, look, we're not having policy debates over whether the top marginal rate should be 36% or 38%. That matters, but at the end of the day, the fate of the cosmos is not going to turn on that question. This is fundamentally whether America remains a free enterprise system, whether we continue to have our fundamental liberties like free speech. And I will say on the point, Adam, you just made, there are two significant imbalances. One is the radical left uses force to coerce, to silence, to cancel those with whom they disagree. They don't want dissent. They don't want free speech. They want to use power to silence you. On the right, look, we don't want to silence. I don't want to shut Bernie Sanders up. I don't want to shut AOC up. Frankly, I want more people to listen to the idiocies they're spouting and to engage with them on substance. And so one side is willing to use force, whereas the other side, we don't want to use force. We want open and free debate. But secondly, historically, the right, conservatives, have undervalued the importance of ideas. And what I trace in the book is the left, really starting in the 1960s, began systematically seizing the organs of transmission of ideas. And the left stays in power by using, number one, force, but number two, indoctrination. And they always start with kids. It's why universities and K through 12 education are the beginning of all of this. And so we've got to get people right of center fighting. And look, you're doing it on your podcast. You're engaged in the battle of ideas, but most conservatives are more focused on making widgets in North Carolina and going out and running a business and not fighting in the battleground of ideas. And that's how we've let these institutions become captured.
Well, it strikes me that all the damage and the indoctrination used to take place on college campuses, and it was always traditionally that way. In the last 10 minutes, somebody on the left went, why don't we just get them when they're 7? It'll be a lot easier. Because I called it, and I called it when I was talking about COVID, I called it crate training. You have to get the puppies, and you have to crate train them when they're puppies. You can't crate train middle-aged dogs. They won't go along with it. So somebody figured out we got to crate train these kids. And when they get to college, a lot of them have their heads screwed on straight by 18, and maybe their dad was maybe they have a military family. Yeah. They're not going to listen to us. We can't indoctrinate them. But if we can get them K through 12, why not start working on them early? And it seems like a very conscious move happened just in the last several years, just few years, that they went, let's get them before college.
Well, look, that's right. And this is an approach that Marxists have had for a long time. And the book begins with me telling my family story. Adam, as you know, my dad is from Cuba, and my father fought in the communist revolution in Cuba. He fought alongside Fidel Castro, and he was a teenager. He was 14 when he started fighting. And my dad was thrown in prison in Cuba. He was tortured in Cuba, and he ultimately fled Cuba and came to America. And my father said, look, the revolution, it was all kids like him. It was 14 and 15-year-old boys. And if you look at every Marxist revolution across the globe, it is almost always teenagers. They're young, they're passionate, they're idealistic, and they don't have life experience. So they're easily deluded. They don't have judgment to recognize when they're being lied to. But a story I also tell in the book is a story my grandmother, my abuela, told me about Cuba. She was a 6th grade teacher in Cuba. And my abuela said that when Castro took over, he almost immediately sent the military into the elementary schools. And the soldiers would go into a kindergarten or a 1st grade, and they would tell all the little children, they'd say, kids, close your eyes and pray to God for candy. And the kids would do so. And they'd open their eyes and there'd be no candy. And then the soldiers would say, close your eyes and pray to Fidel Castro for candy. And while their eyes were closed, the soldiers would quietly slip a piece of candy on each child's desk. That's what Marxism is. It's based on indoctrination, as you said, getting them in the crate, getting them when they're young and impressionable. And it's starting with that indoctrination early. And it is, sadly, it is fully infused universities, K through 12, and just about every other major institution in America.
Yeah, you see those cartoons coming out of that Hamas creates for the 5-year-olds to talk about the infidels and stuff. And yeah, there's a reason they're trying to get them at age 5. Something that's been vexing me and scaring me and worrying me, but I'm really interested in your take on this subject. January 6th in the committee, the recent revelations about Derek Chauvin, the officer that was accused of killing George Floyd and so on and so forth. I'm sitting around as an adult and I'm going, wow, you people are willing to railroad American citizens, to take law-abiding citizens and have them rot in prison, and you're fine with it. You're taking a police officer and you're going to doctor things and move autopsy reports around so that this guy will go into prison for the rest of their life. You will take innocent Americans with no criminal history who are peacefully wandering through the halls and attempt to incarcerate them for years. By the way, there was one shot fired that on January 6th. It was a cop. It was a Capitol policeman shooting an unarmed woman in the face. Slap on the hand, no problemo. Not interested in him. The CNN's not interested, and neither is the January 6th committee. You also won't let into evidence why this happened, how it could have been prevented. When they start a committee, sorry for filibustering here, but you start a committee, you go, why do you need a committee? And you go, we need a committee so this doesn't happen again. Well, arresting elderly people and throwing them in the hole is not preventing it from happening again. What's preventing it from happening again is finding out the chain of command, how far in advance they knew, who knew, what they knew, and when they knew it before the event took place. Right. That's the way you prevent it. You're not interested in that, but you people who've sworn an oath to this country are happy to take citizens that you know are not criminals and lock them up for your cause. That is scary to me.
Yeah, look, it is very scary, and it's a topic actually I discuss at considerable length in the book, talking about in particular the cultural Marxist in government. And January 6th, we've seen the Biden Justice Department use January 6th as an excuse to persecute their political enemies, to weaponize the Department of Justice and the FBI and law enforcement, and to go after those on the other side of the aisle. And they quickly conflate those who commit acts of violence. And in my view, if you commit an act of violence, if you assault a police officer, you ought to be prosecuted and go to jail. And that's true whether I agree with your politics or disagree with your politics. Acts of violence should be punished. But what the Biden administration does is it conflates the acts of violence of a relatively small number of people with the peaceful free speech of thousands upon thousands of people in January 6th. And they're using it as an excuse to go and persecute their political opponents. By the way, you combine this with what the Biden administration did with COVID mandates in the military, COVID mandates in the federal government, which they used, the vaccine mandate. They threw over 10,000 active duty military out of the military, and they used it, I think, as an excuse to purge conservatives from the military. And this is for the cultural Marxists. They will use force to destroy their enemies, that weaponizing government, that is an integral part of their strategy. And if we're going to fight back on it, we've got to understand what it is they're doing. And a big part of how you fight back on it is sunshine and transparency, because the ideas of the radical left are wildly unpopular. So, for example, I've had the FBI before Senate Judiciary. I've questioned them multiple times on January 6th, whether they had undercover agents that committed acts of violence, whether they engaged in excitement to acts of violence. They refuse to answer any of these questions because the Biden administration believes they're unaccountable and have no responsibility to the American people. Again, I discuss all of that in the book as well.
Yeah, when you really start to unpack January 6th, it's a horrible look for America, and it started as a horrible look from the opposite side of the aisle, which, these radical Trump supporters, taking over the Capitol. But when you really start looking at the footage, and by the way, whether it's all the footage from January 6th or Elon Musk buying Twitter, they protest way too much. What's wrong with releasing all of the footage? You guys hired a Hollywood producer to come in and create a narrative. But what's wrong with all the, there's security issues. I mean, it's laughable.
Yeah, look, and Adam, actually, something you mentioned there, which is Elon Musk buying Twitter, that's something I discuss at great length on the Big Tech chapter. But it's part of, I basically advocate 3 buckets of tools to use to fight back. So every chapter ends with how we fight back, and it lays out concrete steps we can take. And the 3 buckets of tools, one is sunlight and transparency, because the ideas of the extreme left are extremely unpopular. The second is changing the cost-benefit analysis, increasing the cost side of the ledger to going woke. So, for example, the chapter on big business, I do a deep dive into what happened at Disney and what happened at Bud Light and what happened at Target, all 3 of which lost billions and billions of dollars. And that changed the playing field for the next CEO contemplating going woke to realize, wow, there are real downsides to going down this road. We need to increase the cost side of the ledger. But the third bucket of tools, and you just referenced it, Adam, is I encourage conservatives and libertarians with resources, people who've been successful in business, to invest in either creating or buying organs of transmission of ideas. So buy a TV station, buy a radio station, buy a book publishing house, buy a movie studio, buy a record label. And the example I use is Elon Musk buying Twitter, the single most important step for free speech in decades. And we need another example I talk about. Several years back, Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post for $300 million. Now look, $300 million is a lot of money. But there are a fair number of successful people in business who could put that kind of money together. Bezos didn't buy the Washington Post because he's bullish about the long-term profitability of print media. He bought the Washington Post because he wanted to own the commanding heights of public discourse. And we need people right of center to say, we cannot cede this to the radical left and expect to maintain our freedom. And so this book is urging more people to engage in that battle. And Adam, you do it every day on this podcast. You're fighting in the arena of ideas, but we need, with all due respect, 100 more Adam Carollas springing up on 100 more avenues.
Yeah, I think my kids would disagree, but I get what you're saying, and I like it. And yeah, we now, and you tell me if you feel this is right. We've kind of hit a saturation point where there are more of these people being created. And I say created because I'm a libertarian. I grew up in L.A. I come from a kind of hippy-dippy, free to be you and me kind of family. I never had these thoughts. I got forced into these thoughts. I had somebody saying, you need to show me your vaccine passport or you can't eat at a restaurant. Somebody started telling me there was no biological difference between men and women. I started hearing all this stuff and I went, oh, now I'm against what you're saying. I was for all this stuff formerly. My mom was a hippie. She hated big government. She hated the FBI. She hated big pharma. That's how it worked. Now, and she hated foreign wars. Now, all of a sudden, the left is for foreign wars. They're for big pharma. They're for big government. They're for, we're supposed to leave the FBI and the CIA, look the other way when they're up to whatever the corruption they're up to. This was against every tenet my mother ever had, and any hippie or progressive who ever came before this day thought. And all of a sudden, they flipped the script, and they want all the libertarians to go along with them, which is insane. And then they label you a far-right Republican, MAGA, far right with all the labels, and then all the labels keep flying, racist, xenophobic, sexist, whatever. I mean, they're master marketers, but the reality is I haven't changed any of my thoughts on any of these subjects.
Look, I think that is exactly right. And it reminds me, you may remember a while back, Elon Musk tweeted out an ideological spectrum, and he viewed himself as center left. And then the second drawing, the whole thing shifted radically to the left. And suddenly he's right of center. He's like, I didn't move at all. Just you people went crazy. And actually another illustration of that. So a couple of weeks ago, I was out in LA and did Bill Maher's show. And I've never done Bill Maher's show before. I met Bill for the first time when I did the interview. And look, I think Bill is an old school liberal. But more and more, I find myself agreeing with Bill. I've tweeted out at least a dozen times monologues that he's done because, for example, he believes in free speech, which bizarrely is forcing Bill in today's world effectively to become a conservative, because believing in free speech is no longer accepted on the radical left. And I pointed out to Bill, I said, look, you've got people from right and left actually talking to each other on your show. That happens on virtually no other shows because the way the cultural Marxists maintain power is they only have one accepted view. Big tech will censor you if you don't say what they want. Universities will... Look, we've got the world has changed, and that has made old school liberals. If you believe in individual liberty, you have common cause no longer with the left, but with the right, because defending free speech and individual liberty is a I think fundamental tenet of who we are as Americans.
Yeah, I loved your appearance on Maher, by the way. I thought it was really great. But before you go, I would love to get your thoughts. We're going to talk about this later in the show. But Hunter Biden is now willing to testify before the House Oversight Committee, but only in public. Do you have any predictions or suspicions? Or
So, look, I would certainly predict fireworks. I think Hunter Biden, there's an interesting dynamic because Hunter Biden, I think the evidence of corruption is enormous, but even worse, the evidence of corruption of the Biden Department of Justice is much greater. In that you look at David Weiss, the special prosecutor, who deliberately allowed statute of limitations to expire on most of Hunter's worst crimes. And in particular, you look at the testimony, for example, of the two IRS whistleblowers who came forward and said, the Attorney General of the United States committed multiple felonies. He lied under oath to the United States Congress. He engaged in obstruction of justice and in particular blocked investigation into Joe Biden's involvement. As you know, I do a podcast every week. I do it 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, called Verdict with Ted Cruz. We've done multiple podcasts doing deep dives into what is the evidence on Hunter Biden, on Joe Biden. And many of the Democrats and some of their useful idiots in the media have basically decided to throw Hunter overboard. I think they've reached a decision. All right, we can't save him. He's going to jail. But they're circling the wagons trying to protect Joe and say, Joe, initially they said Joe never talked to Hunter about his business dealings. Then that was proven to be a lie. Then they said, well, Joe's wasn't involved in his business dealing. That was proven to be a lie. Then they've gotten to, well, he wasn't in business with Hunter. And their talking point is there is no direct evidence of Joe Biden's corruption. There is direct evidence. And so on the podcast, I've walked through at considerable level what I would encourage House members to do, and I will say on my podcast Verdict, I've had both James Comer and Jim Jordan on the podcast for 2 episodes each. And so we did a deep dive with each of them. What I have encouraged them to do and what I would encourage them to do is remember the focus here is not on Hunter. Look, listen, if Hunter were just some poor substance abusing crackhead, it would not be an issue of public import. The reason this matters to the country is not because of Hunter. It matters because what Hunter was selling for millions and millions of dollars to Ukrainians and Russians and Chinese communists was favors from daddy. Hunter does not have skills that are worth millions of dollars to anybody. The only thing he had to sell were favors from daddy. And so I would encourage the House members, keep the focus on Joe Biden's corruption, and in particular, the evidence that Joe himself, there's now growing evidence that he effectively solicited and received bribes from foreign nationals. That's the issue of public concern, not Hunter's own personal demons. He's clearly a troubled soul, but it's daddy's conduct that is what I think matters to the country.
Yeah, and Joe Biden doesn't do himself any favors because he lies so much, and it's so sweeping. I said at the time, I've never spoken to my son about his business ever. I'm like, well, that makes you a bad dad then. Because if my son had a frozen yogurt shop in Pasadena and he came over for Thanksgiving, I would talk to him about how his business is going. But he basically goes, I never spoke to him about his business ever. So it's basically like saying, we're accusing you of murdering your wife. Well, I was in Denver that weekend. I wasn't even in L.A. the day they found her body. And then at some point I go, well, I was in L.A., but I wasn't in the house. And then at some point we figure out you're in the house. And now you have to go, well, I was in L.A., I was in the house, but I didn't pick up the knife. Well, now I don't believe you. And that's where I'm at with Joe Biden. God, he's corrupt.
You're exactly right, Adam. And I'll say these are interconnected because the Biden White House engages in lying as a political strategy. Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, stands up and lies on a regular basis. Part of the reason they do that is they know that journalism is corrupted. And so the corrupt corporate media will not cover their lies. They are, and I talk about this in the chapter on journalism on the book, which is a decade ago, the media leaned left, and I use CNN for an example. So a decade ago at CNN, they viewed their vision as they aspired to be journalists. If you ask them, they say, we want to be fair and balanced. We want to present both sides. We want to be fair and objective. Now, they were lousy at it. They leaned very hard left, but they viewed a goal of actually presenting the news. I used to go on CNN once a week, and you could actually present a conservative view. You could have a conversation, and it was meaningful. What happened is Donald Trump broke the media, and they no longer view their mission as present both sides or be fair and balanced. They are advocates. They are not just Democrats. They are the left wing of the Democrat Party. Their mission is to protect Joe Biden at all costs, to destroy Donald Trump, who is a threat to democracy in their worldview, and to advocate for the left wing. So I did a whole podcast, for example, that was entitled CNN is Hamas's Air Force. So is MSNBC, so is ABC. And I went through on the podcast a dozen different, I just played their coverage where they were repeating the Hamas talking points, and Hamas can count on the corrupt corporate media to be part of their efforts. Hamas knows they can't beat Israel on their own, but they are counting on the useful idiots in the media to demonize Israel with the complicity of the Biden White House. And so why does Biden lie? Because ABC News won't cover it on the 6 o'clock news. And so the corruption of media helps drive government into the dishonest and radical left.
Last question. You think he's going to make it, or if the polls keep showing the way they're showing now, is CNN and the mainstream media and the Democrats going to just throw him under the bus? Because the day they stop lying for him is the day they've lost faith in him, and they're going to have to get rid of him, and then they're going to start magically reporting on all the stuff they refused to report on through the last 3 years.
So I think the odds of Biden not being the nominee have risen dramatically in the last couple of months. And I actually did a podcast about 2 months ago where I laid out, I think there is a very real risk that the Democrats dump Joe Biden at their convention next summer and they parachute in Michelle Obama. And I think you're seeing both elected Democrats and also the corporate media starting to get really nervous about Biden and starting. We saw David Axelrod, for example, float. That trial balloon was significant. And I think that risk is rising every day. And I think we need to be prepared for it. I think Michelle Obama would be incredibly dangerous as a candidate. And so how we fight back on it, you said the last question, so I do want to just make a pitch to your viewers and listeners on the book. The book, which is called Unwoke, How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America. Let me encourage you, go online right now. Go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Books A Million or wherever you get your book. Buy a copy, but buy a couple of copies, which is Christmas is coming up. I think the book makes a great Christmas gift. And so buy a copy for your mom. Buy a copy for your best friend. Buy a copy for your crazy left-wing neighbor to try to beat some sense into him. Or buy a copy for your kids and grandkids so they can understand what it is that people are trying to indoctrinate them with. It's fun. It's interesting. By the way, I tell some war stories about your buddy Jimmy Kimmel. He's in the book and
basketball game.
Yeah.
And as you remember well, playing him one-on-one. But you know what I also talk about, Adam? When I got to the Senate, just talking about entertainment, it used to be part of being in the Senate that you go on the late night shows. So I've done Jimmy's shows, I've done Jimmy Fallon, I've done Jay Leno, I've done Stephen Colbert. None of them have Republicans on anymore.
No.
Like they all just, and the problem is late night comedy is not funny anymore. Actually, Kimmel read from the book at his show where I said late night comedy isn't funny anymore because you just have angry hosts screaming, "I hate Donald Trump," and that's not funny. And Jimmy turned around and read that, and I said, "Yeah, that's actually true. Thanks for the promotion." He also had a drag queen read my book to little kids, which I actually thought was pretty funny. It was an exception to my comment that late night comedy is not that funny.
Well, hopefully, and I don't know, but I think that the left is gone so far left that they've lost logical, normal Americans, and they've created all these other alternative voices and all these other platforms. And, they created, the reason Rumble exists is because YouTube got nuts. And there's many different examples of this. And I think they've been bitten by their own snake. If I was in charge of them, I should have said, look, we, go crazy, but not batshit crazy because we're losing our audience. And hopefully this is the beginning of a normal society recapturing itself. And guys like you, Ted, are at the vanguard of that. So thank you very much for that.
Look, I appreciate what you do every day, Adam. It makes a difference. And we need voices for liberty. Your podcast and other voices out there, it's really important.
Well, we'll keep up the good fight. You keep it up as well, and you're welcome back anytime you like, Ted Cruz.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Take care. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Right, thanks.
Ted Cruz, everyone. Unwoke is the name of the book. We'll take a quick break. Be back with the news right after this.
And now, Alcoa presents Definitely Not a Jew on the Adam Carolla Show. Dateline, Orem, Utah. During a traffic stop, a 27-year-old man's wallet was searched. In his wallet, police found a decayed, severed finger. Definitely not a Jew.
All right, Jim Breuer is hanging with us. We got the news to do, and we'll get into that with Chris Maxpad. What do you got?
All right, so I mentioned this with Ted, but Hunter Biden willing to testify before the House Oversight Committee but only in public, according to a letter his attorney wrote to Republican lawmakers.
Yeah. So, all right.
What does that mean?
He doesn't want to do it.
Usually
like
it's a closed-door deposition.
He wants people to listen.
Well, first off, we don't know that he wants this or he's just doing some saber rattling, like what you want. So when you're in a disagreement, I don't know, you and I owned a pizzeria together, right?
Yep.
And I wanted the pizzeria and you wanted the pizzeria and we were arguing legally back and forth.
Right.
At some point, I could say, you know what? Let's just sell the pizzeria then. Just sell it. Let's just sell it.
Right.
Now, I don't want it sold. I'm seeing if I can fuck with you. I'm seeing if you go, oh, all right, hold on, let's just agree to whatever. I don't want to sell the pizzeria. I don't want to sell the pizzeria either, but there are tactics where you go, let's just do it, then do it, which could be what's happening. I don't know. The thing that's crazy about this whole Hunter Biden, okay, there's problems.
There's a lot of issues here.
The problems is the people that should be looking into this were also the people who ran cover for it. So you're saying to the DOJ and the FBI, why aren't you guys looking into this? And it's like people going,
mobsters.
why doesn't CNN say they're sorry about being wrong about everything COVID? It's like because they're reporting on themselves.
Right.
They're reporting on themselves. So the DOJ and the FBI can't look into something that's going to out them. They're going to get outed first.
So it's the gangsters against gangsters. That's basically we need the gangsters to look after the gangsters.
We're basically saying you are, you're the night watchman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're in charge of the warehouse, and the warehouse keeps getting robbed. And the reason it keeps getting robbed is because you're getting paid off and looking the other way. And then what we keep saying to the night watchman is, can we look into this? And the guy's like, well, I can't really look into it because I'm the reason it's getting robbed. Right. So, and you want me to look into it? I'm the guy who's taking the money.
Right.
So I'm the guy running the DOJ, Department of Justice, and the FBI is the ones who are running interference for Biden. Right? So
Correct.
How are they going to look into themselves?
Now, haven't they all been caught at this point? I don't go in that depth of facts and trying to figure it out, but haven't it...
The thing about, you don't really... I'll give you the layperson's version of it.
Yep.
I have no business with my dad. No business. And I know many, many people who have no business with their dad. But there is, and when I say I have no business with my dad, there's no business. But if you started pulling out checks, we're like, well, here's a check you wrote your dad for $50,000.
Right.
But it said reimbursement. I'd be like, oh, well, that was just the one check, Well, here's a bunch of emails with you talking to your dad about business, And here's a bunch of pictures of you golfing with your dad and his business partner. How could if it either exists or it doesn't exist? You know what I mean? It's like when they accuse someone of being a pedophile, and then he goes, "I'm not a pedophile," and then they go, "We found some pictures on your laptop." Those guys looked younger than they were. It's like you're either in or you're out.
Right.
You know what I mean? You could accuse me of being a pedophile all day long and search every device I have. There is nothing.
Right.
There's nothing. But it's not some stuff.
Right.
And then a little bit of this, and then somebody else came forward and said something about something. You know what I mean? It's like there's Henry Winkler and there's Weinstein. You know what I mean? And Henry Winkler, you can look all you want, but there's nothing there. And then there's Harvey Weinstein. It's like, well, maybe he was with Gavin Newsom's wife at some part. Maybe he did ask. Okay, he asked this actress to come up to his room and open the door with his dick when he's wearing a bathrobe. Like, you think you could find any of that with Henry Winkler? Like, he doesn't do it.
Right.
He doesn't do it.
Right.
It doesn't exist. And then there's there's a little this and a little that. Yeah, he went to Ukraine on Air Force 2, and he got the prosecutor fired, and the guy was prosecuting Burisma, who was the company his son was into, but he's not. There's no direct link. First off,
that's what drives me nuts.
There's no direct link because they're not dumb. They open up shell companies. They get their grandkids' name paid. Money goes through their brother. The brother reimburses him 10% of the whatever. 10% for the big guy. No, they're not. They're not taking pictures of them with pillowcases of cash being handed to them by Ukrainian officials.
Right.
They figured it out. They're not stupid.
They're professional.
They're professionals. They start shell companies. They do what criminals do.
Professional criminals.
Yes.
And they're good at it.
Right. But to say there's nothing to see here is insane. There's piles of documents to see.
Don't you think, though, that most of the country that already knows this, they're
first off, you got to think about it this way.
Yeah.
What does Hunter Biden do for a living? What skill does he possess?
He's an artist.
He's a damn good one. Don't knock him.
By the way, everyone makes fun of his art.
Sold very well.
I look at it and go, meh.
Yeah.
It's really an indictment on any modern artist, because this junkie just took a crazy straw and finger paints and does what you do. Like he literally, you can take a look at Hunter Biden's paintings and put it up against any modern artist, and I'd go that they're the same.
He's right there.
He's right there.
He's neck and neck.
You keep up, yeah.
Yeah, but okay. Look, if you're accusing, you can accuse the Trump kids for doing shit. Like they're dealing with Russia. Okay, but they're trying to open a hotel in Russia.
Big difference.
They do something.
Legitimate business.
Well, and you can go, yeah, but in Russia, you got to pay off the right guys, and they know the game and stuff. And you go, yeah, okay. I'm not saying they don't do that. That's how you got to get along in Russia. Fine. But they have a business. Hunter Biden doesn't have a business.
You got to pay off everybody no matter where you build a business. Yes. Period.
Okay, so first things first, Hunter Biden possesses no tangible talent or skills and has no widgets he's selling and no expertise. So, number one, go ahead and be suspicious. Why would this guy get jobs in Ukraine, of all places, working for energy companies, of all places, if his dad wasn't his dad? So, it's already pay for play just already. The fact that they hired him makes Joe Biden guilty, is what I'm saying. But then the money started flowing to Joe Biden. His business partner said it. There's documents. There's canceled checks. Now, they're not stupid. His brother doesn't write him a check for $200,000 and then write at the bottom for the Ukraine energy company. He writes reimbursement. That's what you write.
Right.
That's what's going on.
Right.
And the people that are like, oh, come on, there's nothing here. Oh, there's a lot. Right. There's a ton.
The only reason they say that is because they're still on the Trump derangement.
Yeah, I get it.
That is.
Now,
it all does go back to that.
They look at themselves.
It's insane.
They look at themselves as the French resistance. And would it be okay if you're in France and it was being occupied by Nazis? Look, did you see Hogan's Heroes?
Yeah.
They were very deceptive. They had like a coffee pot, but it was a speaker.
Right.
You know, they had a stovetop. It was a periscope. Right. They had a tunnel going on. All very deceptive. Yeah. Very deceptive. But they were doing it for a reason. You agreed with it. The Nazis were horrible, and so we defend them.
Right.
That's what's going on, minus the Nazi, except for you've labeled him a Nazi, which then makes it possible for you to do what you do.
Yes.
That's where we're living. All right.
Well, anyway, the public deposition will be on December 13th. I don't know what the angle is, but yeah. It's
interesting.
It's curious.
Now, Ted's right. They got to stick with, forget about it. He's the son of a politician who's making money off his dad.
Get the czar.
His dad's the president.
There's a bigger picture.
Yeah.
All right, so some weird stuff going on in sports journalism. First off,
this is already funny.
Yeah. So Sports Illustrated is being accused of using AI to write their articles, and then also the authors on the website are AI generated with AI pictures.
Wow.
So this website Futurism, they did this investigation and they alleged that all this was happening. So Sports Illustrated released a statement saying, We are horrified by this story. If true, these practices violate everything we believe about journalism. We deplore being associated with something so disrespectful to our readers, so they're looking into it too, because they're using other like parent groups that have hired third-party groups to write their articles and things like that. So, but boiling it down, it may all be AI writing Sports Illustrated stuff.
Who reads Sports Illustrated anymore, or the USA Today, or the Times, or New York Times? Like, I wouldn't bother. It's all so fucking woke and fucked up now. I don't even bother with it. Like, you started putting dudes in your swimsuit edition. You start putting fat chicks in your swimsuit. It's like, we're done.
Yeah.
You have...
Bookmark deleted.
Yes, gone. Not interested anymore.
That's a good point. Anyone, no one's interested in that anymore.
No.
Well,
No one pays attention to that.
Well, there's another... So Deadspin also wrote a sports article.
Oh, yeah, this is funny.
Yeah, and this is a guy named Karen J. Phillips. He said the article is, the NFL needs to speak out against the Kansas City Chiefs fan in blackface and a native headdress.
Right.
And then they posted the picture, which we'll put up here.
Yeah.
Well, not this one, but
They always do. See, Chris,
Kids wearing the colors.
How do you like being on this side of the glass? They always put the wrong. They always do the wrong picture. Yeah, he put the reveal picture
There it
up.
is.
Right.
There you
Right.
go.
They
and then
start
put-
off with that
They put this
picture.
picture up, and it shows the side profile of this kid in native headdress. And yeah, his face is painted black.
Mm-hmm.
But then people were quick to point out, wait, actually his face is painted half red, half black, the Chiefs colors.
Yes.
And so Elon Musk even was ripping this guy for doing it. But like, now people are arguing about this still. Like, he's even doubling down, the writer.
They always double down.
He's like-
that's Jussie Smollett sticking with his story.
Yeah, it's like, look, for the idiots in this is the writer, for the idiots in my mentions who are treating this as some harmless act because the other side of his face is painted red, I could
God.
make the argument that it makes it even worse.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and he says, you're all the ones who hate Mexicans but wear sombreros on Cinco. And
I don't even know what what does that mean?
I don't even know, but
Okay.
he's
He's a shitty writer.
He is,
That's
but
his example.
He's a clickbaiter.
Yeah. And people are saying, look, it's still offensive because he's painted himself as a Native
Okay.
American.
First off, I reject all of this all the time. Number one, first things, there's literally more race hustlers than there is actual racism in this country at this
Agreed.
point. There's more people getting paid hustling race than there are actual Klansmen in this country. I'll bet if you took all the assholes online that are out hustling with race, Derek Chauvin and whatever Catholic, Covington Catholic,
Yeah.
and Kyle Rittenhouse. If you took all the hustlers, and by the way, I would include the ladies from The View as hustlers.
They are major hustlers.
There's
they may
five.
be the top dogs.
Most people on CNN.
Yes.
You would, if you took all the people online who had their blog posts and their podcasts and stuff, you would outnumber the actual members of the Klan.
I agree.
That's where we're at now. There are more physical race hustlers than there are actual members of the Klan. Like, I don't even know what the Klan membership is, but every third fucking Yenta and jackoff on Twitter is a race hustler at this point, including this guy whose name we don't even know from Deadspin. I mean, never heard of, is what I'm saying. Number one. Number two, you name your team after either animals that are sort of majestic or that you see, you do a lot of lions and bears and jaguars
Right.
and things like that. And you do chiefs and warriors and stuff like that because you look at them as fierce competitors.
Correct.
So it is a homage to the
Chief.
group. Yes.
It's the head mother.
Do you want to hear some of this article? Let's just read. Let's
Yeah.
hear what Caron said.
Let's hear it. Who's a black dude, right?
Yes.
All right.
It takes a lot to disrespect two groups of people at once. But on Sunday afternoon in Las Vegas, a Kansas City Chiefs fan found a way to hate black people and
God.
the Native Americans at the same
They're
time.
so
Hate them.
poisoned. They're so poisoned.
The
was
little
it-
kid couldn't wait to hate.
Yes.
It was as if John Gruden's emails had come to life.
John Gruden's stuff was like
Oh, my
G-rated. John Gruden got thrown under the fucking bus. He made fun of some guys who had big lips or
This guy's
something.
computer should be hacked and
Such
looked
a
at.
douche. Yeah.
The image of a Chiefs fan in blackface wearing a native headdress during a road game leads to so many unanswered questions. Why did the camera person give this fan the attention? Why did the producer allow that camera angle to be aired at all? Is that fan a kid, teenager, or young adult? Despite their age, who taught that person that what they were wearing was appropriate? The answers to all those questions lead back to the NFL.
By the way, let's talk about appropriate. The guy used to show up, Barrel Man in Denver would show up just wearing a barrel with suspenders. There's a guy, the guy from Carolina would dress up as like Mr. Heat Miser. Have you looked at the Raiders Nation and see what those fucking gargoyles are wearing? Like, nobody goes to a Raiders game wearing anything appropriate. Number one, but his team is called the Chiefs, and so he's wearing a ceremonial headdress that a chief would wear.
And he's wearing the colors of the team.
People were defending this writer too, saying, "Well, it was an away game, though. He shouldn't be going to an away game dressed like that."
Jesus
oh my
Christ.
God,
this guy's such a fucking idiot.
While it isn't the league's responsibility to stop racism and hate from being taught in the home, they are a league that has relentlessly participated in prejudice. If the NFL had outlawed the chop at Chiefs games and been more aggressive in changing the team's name, then we wouldn't be here. There's no place for a franchise to be called the Chiefs in a league that's already eradicated Redskins.
The Chiefs is like the Generals. It's like it's just a rank, essentially, of people, number one. Number two, is this guy right for sports? Is this a sports publication, Deadspin?
Isn't Spin like a...
Deadspin's like all
It's
everything. But
It's clickbait.
All right, we write in the end zone. We have end racism. Do you understand? They're manufacturing racism now.
Yes.
They're manufacturing
Yes.
it. We're nuts. It's 2024. We never stop talking about racism. So much to the point, every player on the field is black, and they celebrate in the end zone under a 5-foot banner of a thing on the floor that says "End racism"
on all their helmets. But yeah, this guy's like, they relentlessly participate in prejudice.
This guy's a fucking boob.
This feels like it was written by AI.
Yes,
It could be. That guy may be AI.
yeah. We're so fucking. We're such idiots.
Well, but the fact that people even give it attention is mind-boggling.
I know,
it's
but
it's what you say. It's produced. It's all well manufactured and produced.
The point is they're getting so far over their fucking skis now that this kid's going to sue.
That's what everyone is
Deadspin.
encouraging.
That'd be great.
To do. Yeah.
Covington Catholic
He
guy
should.
sued. Whoopi Goldberg, the aforementioned Whoopi Goldberg's got to pay Kyle Rittenhouse for calling him a racist. Like, these people are going to start getting sued, and once they get sued, they'll shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
They'll do what Bud Light did, which is, hey, Dana White, we got $100 million. We're going to take it away from the he-she and drop it off in the octagon.
That's right.
Because they care about money, and that's how it's going to work. And I hate litigious people, but if it'll shut these people up, then we got to do it. And we're going to have to do it with the businesses that got shut down by COVID and all the fucking government overreach and all of it. They need to be sued.
Yes.
So they stop.
The biggest movement in years in civil rights. No bus. They put them out of business. We're not riding your buses anymore. Putting them out of business. Whoa. It baffled. That's the only way to do it, is put them all out of business.
All right, one more.
All right. Well, Jim, he just moved to Florida, so let's do a fun
I
Florida
love Florida.
story.
Go ahead. You can say what you want about
Are you in
Florida.
Naples?
Yeah.
Oh, love it.
That's a
It's
great
so
spot.
nice. I didn't realize I
normal.
was that poor till I moved there.
Yeah, it's a lot of rich people.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's some serious cash.
Well, police just arrested a Miami woman on aggravated battery charge over the weekend after they said she stabbed her boyfriend in the eyelid with a hypodermic needle during a domestic dispute.
The eyelid.
Yeah.
Oh.
She was 44. She said her boyfriend of 8 years, they had been in an ongoing argument about him looking at other women, and that escalated Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The report states that the man went to lay down on the couch, and she jumped on him on top with 2 rabies needles that were for their dogs.
Wow.
Wow.
It's a passionate woman.
Yeah.
I respect that.
She's,
What? She doesn't
Wow.
look anything like I thought she was going to look. I thought her was like a petite Jewish lady.
I know. Yeah. So anyway, she then left after realizing what she had done. The man required treatment at the hospital. She was jailed on a $7,000 bond after a judge found probable cause to charge her with a second-degree felony. But just, no looking at other women now.
Yeah. Well, message
She
sent.
seems insecure.
Yeah. Well, she's not great to look at.
I want to see the guy.
Yeah, he wants to see the guy in the mirror,
just
too.
wants to see.
He just wants to
He can't see anything.
He can't see anything. I'd always I remember what old Woody Allen movie, I don't know why, I think about every once in a while, where someone goes, his guy, he got shot in the eye. And Woody Allen goes, oh, so he can't see? And he goes, no, he's dead. And he goes, oh, yeah, right. I don't know why that cracked me up. All right, well, we'll go out on a happy note. Woof. Jim Breuer's got a stand-up special, Country Boy Will Survive, by Jim Breuer. It's available on Rumble and YouTube. And Ted Cruz, Unwoke, How to Defeat the Cultural Marxism in America as well. Me, Fargo Theater, doing stand-up. That'll be tomorrow night, one show there. Then Nashville, going to Zany's. Doing 4 shows there, Friday and Saturday. In Huntsville, doing stand-up in Alabama, doing a bunch of shows there on Sunday. Just go to AdamCarolla.com for all the live shows. Until next time, Adam Carolla for Jim Breuer and Ted Cruz and Chris Max Bennett saying, Mahala.